Welcome, everybody. Glory, glory. Who's excited about what God is doing? I can honestly say I am, even though I ain't got a clue what he's doing. And he does things to me that he may not do to you, but he does things to make me open up my eyes. And Tuesday, I got to lay the groundwork for this. But Tuesday, I had to go to the VA. And it was a hectic day. I had to go here, and then I had to go there, and then I had to wait 2 hours and go to this one. And they were just doing things, and everything came back good. But I had to go get some prescriptions because I have to wear toenail polish now. And it's clear, and my daughter would love that because she put lip gloss on me one time when I was in the hospital. But to make a long story short, when I was sitting there waiting for my prescription, I fell asleep. And it was like I'm looking at you right now. It was like I'm talking to a person. This dream was so real to me. And when I woke up, everybody was looking at me. So I don't know if I was talking in my sleep or not. But one thing he showed me, and let's just go there real quick. Flip to Revelations if you would. And this was so real that I called my wife, I told her, and I called other people, and I was really, really wishing that Aunt Ann was still alive because it was a dream. I wanted it interpreted. I even called other people who interpret dreams, and they really can't see it. But what has come to me, this is a dream of correction. So if you'll go to Revelation 6, and I want to read this. I'm going to read verse 1 and verse 2 of it. And then I'm going to tell you my dream. It says, "Now I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures saying with a loud, like a voice like thunder, 'Come and see.'" Now, when I keep saying that, he's saying, look, take attention to what's going on. Listen to what it is. Now, this is John describing Jesus opening up. He says, come listen, come see. But here's the meat of that right here. It says, "And I looked, and behold, a white horse. He who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out and conquered and to conquer." I have studied that this week. You know, some people actually think that's Jesus, and some people think it's the Antichrist. It's however you study it out. But what makes me think it's correction is these words right here in in verse 2. "And behold, a white horse." Okay, have you ever noticed the Antichrist is always an imposter? Have you ever noticed he always uses what God has already established? The rainbow is a promise that he would not destroy us by water. But the rainbow is almost for the LGBTQ, all them people. Okay? It's an imposter. It's also confusion. Whenever the Antichrist gets involved, it brings confusion. But it says this, "He who sat on it had a bow." The word bow in the Bible means strength and power. It means that there's something going to happen. It's a weapon of war. Okay, well, let's go on a little bit further. I'm laying the groundwork here. I know it probably don't make sense yet, but it lays the groundwork. And he says, "And a crown was given to him." He did not have a crown, but he was seeking a crown. Now, jump over here to Revelations 19. And John distinguishes this very much because in that we're kind of confused. But starting with verse 11, it says this in chapter 19. It says, "Now I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse. And he who sat on him was called Faithful and True. In righteousness he judges and makes war. His eyes were like flames of fire, and on his head were many crowns. He had names written that no one knew except himself. He was clothed with a white or a robe dripped in blood, and his name was called a Word of God. And the armies of heaven, clothed them in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses. Now out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he should strike the nations. And he's not talking about countries, that's people. Strike the nations, and he himself will rule them with a rod of iron. He himself treads the winepress of the fierceness and the wrath of Almighty God, and he has on his robe and on his thigh the name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. There is no mistaking that that is Christ. But the first horse we wrote about, there's kind of confusion there. We don't understand. God has established his order. But the enemy brings him in on a white horse. And John sees this white horse. But if you notice, it says that the rider came seeking a crown. Where in 19, he had many crowns. He came, and they had a name for him. Righteousness, faithful, overseer. I'm telling you right now, this is my word of correction. Be careful what crown you're going after. Because it's a setup. A lot of stuff is going on right now, but it's a setup. Now, if you will with me, here's my dream. Go to Daniel 3, please. And we all know this story. But there's something I want you to establish. This is today, folks. Verse 3, starting with verse 1. It says, Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits, and its width 6 cubits. That means it was 90 feet high and 9 feet wide. He set it up. There's the first one. He set it up in the plain of Dura. Now, Dura is a high plain. It's the highest place in Babylon. And he says he set it up in Dura in the province of Babylon. And the king Nebuchadnezzar sent word to gather together all the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, and the magistrates, and all the officials of the province to come to the dedication of an image which King Nebuchadnezzar set up. That's the third setup. He says this, and he goes, so the satraps and the administrators and the governors and the counselors and the treasurers and the judges and the magistrates and all the officials of the province gathered together for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up for. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. 5. Then they heralded or cried aloud, to you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages. I want to stop right there real quick. How many times did you hear the word set up in that? Nebuchadnezzar was the most powerful man on the earth at that time. He was king. He couldn't go no higher. But he wanted to make himself a god. How many of our governors, presidents, high officials want to become gods? So they brought all the magistrates, all the policemen, all the high-ranking people, and they demanded that we dedicate to this image of God. They're seeking to put their name in history. We got to be careful, church, because Nebuchadnezzar was what, almost 4,000 years ago. It's happening today. All the leaders of the nations, All the leaders of all the people, all the governors, they want to be held up. We got senators that think that they're above the law. We got policemen, and we got even administrators. We got priests and preachers that think they're above the law. Verse 5 says this. It says, that at the time you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the harp, the lyre, the psaltery, that's some kind of guitar, in the symphony of all kinds of music, you shall fall down and worship the God image that Nebuchadnezzar has set up. 6. False praise, false worship. It's all through the church today. It's all through everywhere. Think about it. They teach us how to speak in other languages through songs. God created worship so we can worship Him. Lucifer was the worship leader, so he knows how to use it. But they're saying, whenever you hear, because certain instruments together make a peaceful sound. God even used it in 2 Chronicles. He said, send the praisers out before the battle, and the enemy will turn in on himself. See, if we can praise before the battle, we don't have to fight. If we can praise before the decision, we don't have to make the decision. God will make it for us. He's saying it right there. He goes, and go to verse 6. And he goes, and whoever does not fall down. This is powerful. Whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast immediately into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. So at that time, when all the people heard the sounds of the horn, the flute, the harp, the lyre, the symphony, with all kinds of music, all the nations and languages fell down and worshiped the God image which that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. How many of us are falling down to a false god? How many of us are, and this is my dream, I saw a white horse coming in, and the rider upon it, and at first I was excited about seeing it because it was beautiful and everything else, and he had a bow. And then all of a sudden, 2 horns grew out of his head. Is that a crown? Because it said the first horse came seeking crowns. Anybody know what the word corona means in Hebrew? It means crown. Oh, hold it, wrong way. How many of us have fallen under this corona crown? All the people were gathered together, the magistrate, the lawyers, all the government officials, and forced you to bow down to a God that they've created. I'm telling you, folks, we got to be careful. Look, I have no problem with you taking a shot if you desire to do it. But don't force me to do something I don't want to do. I got to go through my stuff. Said he had a bow. Okay, I need your help, baby. This bow is absolutely useless the way it is right now. Unless I do this. I can poke you, but it doesn't do any good. You got to step into your calling. And you got to load it up. Oop, let me get it say right. Oh, man. Oop, there we go. You have to load it up. It's a weapon of war. Don't go far. It's a weapon of war. Because without it, I can't shoot an arrow. So the government has used a weapon of war, science, to make us fearful of something that's useless. Because this bow is useless without the dart. This bow is useless unless we believe there's power in it. this is what he's showing me. Hold, please. So in the Bible, in Isaiah, it talks about darts. See, the dart God gave Isaiah, where he told a king. Hold again. I won't shoot it at you, I promise. Trust me. You better be careful who you trust. But he told the king, fire your arrows out the window, because that's where your blessing comes from. He only fired one and he quit. And the king looked at, or Elijah looked at him and said, if you had fired many, you would have had many blessings. But we'll take the poison dart that the government is giving us. You don't believe me? Let me show you a dart. How many of you know what's in that? How many of us know what was in that? And every time I go to the VA, that's the first thing they ask me. Have you took your shot? Nebuchadnezzar says, if you don't bow down, I'm going to throw you in the fire. If they could throw me into the fire, they would. But see, they can't get away with that. But now, do they do it a different way? Do they kill babies in the womb still? Now they'll give you a pill. What's in the pill? What's in the shot? Right. We can see it on film all they want. But they can put saline in it, or they can put the aborted babies that they're killing in it. We don't know what they're doing. So is the enemy of God shooting fiery darts at us? And we bow down to it? How we bow down? Why? How can you just say it, bow down? Maybe your paycheck, your job. Maybe it was peace in the family. Well, my grandmother's sick. My dad's sick. I'm walking. People are sick in my house. I've got to take the shot. No, my word says that I live in the land of Goshen. I have a covering over me. And the enemy does bring sickness upon my body. But it's only for a short moment. Me and her both. Last week, man, I had kidney stones. My hat's off to you guys who've had them. Oh, my gosh. I felt like I was in the lion's den at I didn't know what to do but whine and cry. But my wife said I was in the emergency room on my knees speaking in other tongues. Because I knew who I needed to give credit to. But I wouldn't take their shot they tried to give me. Though science says that I have to take it. Nothing has to be done but what the Word of God says. But Nebuchadnezzar said, look, if you don't take the shot, if you don't bow down to the beer, no, that's not right either. If you don't bow down to this image that I've created, I'll throw you in the fire. It's going to make me read some more, ain't it? It says this, starting with verse 19. It says, then Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury. Why? Because some little snitches ran up to him and said, teacher, Johnny won't bow down to you. We all met them. We work with some of them. Because they want to worship the crown. They want to receive the power. And the boss man was full of fury. And the expression on his face changed towards Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Those are their Hebrews names. Those are the names I like to use because that's what God gave them. Man changed their name. See, when we were reading about it, it said he had names that no one understood in 19. No one understood the names that God had written on his crowns. But Mishael and Hananiah and Azariah, he goes, he spoke. and commanded them that they heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated. He's saying, look, make it hotter than the hot. See, the devil has powers too. He says, look, I'm going to make it a struggle for you. I'm going to make it so they don't like you. I'm going to make it so they'll talk about you. I'm going to make the fire turn up. I'm going to threaten you with your job. I'm going to threaten you if you associate with them people, we're going to turn our backs on you. If you don't do what the government is telling you to do, I'm going to smoke you. I'm going to hire 86,000 IRS people so they can come after you. If you don't do it my way, I'm going to take your Social Security check. I'm going to give it to the illegals that are doing it my way. Folks, we got to quit worrying about what they doing up there and start worrying about what he's already done for us. Because he's going to give me everything I need. Because I learned his word a long time ago. And he says he would supply my needs. It may not be brand new to you, but when he gives me something new, it's new to me. And when he gave it to me, this is what he said. I wasn't seeing Nebuchadnezzar. I was seeing the modern day church. Says this, and he commanded certain mighty men, sounds like the sheriffs or the deputies or the police department, and he goes, of valor, who were in his army, to bind Hananiah, Mishael, and I can't even get his name out now, Azariah, and he says to bind them and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Let me ask you something. Has anybody ever made a bonfire? And you throw wood into it, right? You don't have to bind it up. Why did they bind the boys up? Because they were afraid of them worshiping God. The biggest enemy that the enemy has is our worship. Do you understand that? You can worship with your hands down. You can worship with your hands up. But if you'll open your mouth and start worshiping God, it doesn't matter how hot the fire is. But they bound them boys up. They threw them into the furnace. And we got to read a little bit more. I'm getting ahead of myself. It says this. And he goes, and they bound them up and threw them in the fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their trousers, and their turbans. A turban is another word for crown. You realize that. And their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's command was urgent, that means like right now. Does that sound familiar, our government? Right now. They're trying to do everything they can because they know they're fixing to get removed from that throne that they've been sitting on. I believe it with all my heart. But guess what, folks? This is something I want to tell you. We can all claim a big red wave coming in or a new vote. But if you don't go and vote, you're voting. You better, there should be so many of us in those booths. And I'm going to say this, and some people ain't going to like this. Don't do early voting. Early voting is how they changed the election. It's a ploy of the enemy. It's convenient. It's convenient to sit home and watch the Word of God on TV. Oh, you get the same thing out of it? No, you don't. I got a cousin, and I'm just going to tell this little sidebar. I got a cousin that belonged to a great big church. And she was on the prayer phones. You call in for prayer, right? You know what she told me? And she told me this. She goes, we'd be sitting at the house getting high, and we'd be praying for people. They don't know what's on the other end of the phone. But if you send them, hey, you really want to find out about a ministry? Send them $1. And watch how much literature you get for another $1. They'll spend $400 to get you to give them $1. But your local church will ask you to give $20 because the roofs got tore up or the sound system got smoked by a storm. And you're like, well, man, we're always giving them money. But who do you call when you're in trouble? It's your local church. And it ain't about money. I'm just saying, I'm using that as an example. But my cousin told me she was on the phone prayer team. You don't know what's on the other end of that phone. And she told me that herself. They were getting high and people would call. So what kind of prayers do you reckon they weren't getting? Go back. It says in verse 22, it says, therefore, because the king commanded was urgent and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flames of the fire killed those men who took up, and well, I'm going to just say, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Makes it easier for some of you to understand. He goes, and these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound in the midst of the burning furnace. Then the king was astonished, and he rose in haste and spoke, saying to the counselors, did we not cast three bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said, yes, O king. True, O king. He says, look, he answered, I see four loosed, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt from, and the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. Can I tell you something? Jesus was on the scene, but nobody knew who Jesus was. But the enemy of God, Satan himself, knew what Jesus looked like, and he was using the king, the government, the president, or whoever it is. This is what I'm going to do. Jesus didn't come with a bow. Jesus came to give us armor that would stop the fiery darts. Anybody ever see one of these? I know I ain't got my mic on. I'll get it just a sec. John, you a little guy. There we go. Could this be a white horse? Because a white horse had power. We see a doctor, we believe what they did. Just because they got letters after their name. Well, I'm a doctorate now. Because I can put a Band-Aid on you. But you don't know where my schooling is. And I got a dart. I'm going to put it in you, and you trust me because I wear a white coat. I come on that horse. Horse of power. But I've also got names or letters after my name. It's called PhD because I'm past having doubt. Understand, just because they got this coat on does not mean that they're a doctor. That means that they just got somewhere they bought a jacket. Because I ain't no doctor. But we come in giving orders. And we do that. Now, me and my wife have had this discussion a lot of different times. The church is not a hospital, but it has an infirmary on it. If you were in the military, every base has a hospital. This little section right here. Maybe this little section right here. But 95% of that base is for training. Fort Bragg is one of the largest installations in the world. We have Walter Reed 2 out there. They call it Womack. But it's just a little 1 mile square area. Where Fort Bragg, if you look at all the areas they have, not Camp McCall, which is the original Fort Bragg. And I know they're changing it to Camp Liberty, which is a bunch of crock. It'll always be the 82nd home of the airborne for me. It'll always be Bragg. But it's got 1,972 square miles on it. So what is Fort Bragg? It's a training facility to train soldiers all over the world. The 18th Airborne Corps is attached to JSODS. It's Joint Operation Command Post. All the heads of the world go to a little area right off the edge of Buckner Road. And that's where all the plans are put together. The church is a place where everybody needs to come to. Not just the building, but the church to assemble together. But because we took their dart, and did you know this? And I heard this from a doctor. Did you know if you take the shot now, you can't go see them for 14 days? Because you're spreading the virus. I'm not giving you I'm not giving you imagination. A doctor told me this. And I'm like, well, what does it do? He says, we're trying to prevent the spread of it. Okay, so I get the shot. Now I got to stay in my house because I'm spreading what I didn't have before. Folks, I'm telling you, we need to wake up. Just because they want to make an image, a crown, we fell for it. People I love have took it. And you know, I know the truth. People I love have died from it. People I know have this virus is real, folks. But I got one who says he's going to cover me. And guess what? Even if I take my last breath, I still win. What is my goal? But the church has succumbed to Nebuchadnezzar's rule so much that they're afraid to worship, so they'll succumb and take it. Because these were high officials. Some of the administrators are priests. We get caught up into the regime. I want to read a little bit more. Where am I at? Oh, here it is, in verse 26. It says, Nebuchadnezzar went near the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spoke, saying, Mishael, Hanai, and Ariza, servants of the Most High God. Did you catch that? The wicked king saw the godliness in them. To the Most High God. Come out and come here. For Hananiah, Mishael, and Ariza, where am I at? I lost my place here. From the midst of that fire, and the star-ups, the administrators, the governors, and the king's counselors gathered together, and they saw these men whose bodies the fire had no power over. The hair on their head was not even singed, nor were their garments affected, and the smell of smoke was not on them. Every time I go to the VA, they ask me if I want to kill somebody because of a statement I made many, many years ago. Every time I go there, they ask me if I'll take this shot. You know the first thing I tell them? No, I've already got the shot. And they'll go, you did? I go, yeah. I got a shot of Jesus. And my doctor, who's an excellent doctor, she really is. Ask my wife. She's a good doctor. But she don't believe in God. But every time I tell her about God, I'm planting a seed. So it's affecting her because she's had clients or customers or patients that have died because of this COVID. But here it is. I'm a prime story. I got emphysema of the lungs. I've had a heart attack. I've had a stroke. I'm a little bit overweight. I'm out of shape. I'm the perfect candidate. There's no way I'm supposed to be doing what I'm doing. But God. Because it's all a setup. Look at the rules they gave us in the beginning of this pandemic. You can't congregate together, but we can go to a bar. You can't go see your family members who are in a hospital, but we can go to Home Depot. We can go to the grocery store. And, because it didn't work their way, so now they're changing the rules on us. We got plenty of food, folks. They just not letting it come through because we didn't do it their way. And I just heard this the other day, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm sort of looking at it. They've got problems in the White House. You got a president and a vice president who hate one another. You got Uncle Joe up there, who back in the 70s supported Klan people. And then now, here in the 2020s, he's the best friend of all them black people. Now, the vice president, who claims that she had such a sheltered life and disabled life. I'm from California. I know all about her. But you know, and she was in her stroller, and they were at a Martin Luther rally, and she just looked up and she said, I just want to be free. Well, then they proved it. The lady that really said that, and she stole it, and she gets up there as an administrator in California, you know, the attorney general, and says, look it, if you smoke dope, I'm going to put you in prison. But she smoked dope but during her administration. But she's in the White House, and because there's so many problems going on, all her cabinet people are leaving, they're quitting. But it's Joe's fault that they're leaving. And she called Joe an incompetent man. So now, in Congress, and old Nancy's loving this, because they're going to put it to a vote to have her impeached. Because if they get rid of Camellia, or what's her name? No, Kamala. Well, she's a Camellia because it depends on where she's at. I mean, she says we're best friends with North Korea. I don't believe that, but if they get rid of Camellia, then Nancy can step in and be a vice president. Is there dissension in the ranks? What does God? What does the Satan do in the churches? Oh, I don't like the pastor. Can't stand the associate pastor. The praise leader makes too much noise, and the praise leaders, they sing wrong. See, the enemy's always trying to cause confusion. Because if he can get you focused on the problem, you're not going to see the results of the answer. All right? I know this is not your hoopla message and everything, but I'm showing you what God has given me. When he showed me that white horse, at first in my mind, I said, wow, it's going to show me Jesus. And the first thing I thought was wonderful counselor. It says that he disguises himself like the morning star. Lucifer was the most beautiful angel ever created. But did you catch that word? He was created. God was from the very beginning. God is. And God is Jesus wrapped in flesh. And God is the Holy Spirit within me. So I don't have to listen to the created being anymore, because I'm living at the one who created everything. But when I saw that white horse, and I really was excited, I think that's why these people were looking at me, because I was probably going, oh, yes, Jesus, oh, yes, Jesus. Might have been asleep, don't know, don't care. But when I saw them two horns come out of his head, deception. How many wolves are in the church in sheep's clothing? But in 19, it said he came out with a sword on a white horse. That sword said he had eyes of fire. But he said that sword was speaking out of his mouth. And that sword is the word of God. That sword is what cuts the thickness of deceit. That sword is what cuts the deception of things that are coming against us. We got to quit worrying about what they think and understand what he brought. See, he didn't have to worry about a bow, because he was victory. That's another thing a bow means. It means victory. First time Jesus came here, he rode on a donkey, a beast of burden. He took all our sickness. He took all our diseases on that cross. But the next time he comes, because when we read it, it said not just him, but all who came with him were riding the white horses. all who came with him. Are you going to ride the white horse? Or are you going to sit down here and bow your knee to a wicked government? Remember, I got the white jacket on, but it ain't been dipped in blood. Because his blood is what covers me. When we read in Daniel, that's exactly what he was showing me. That the church is bowing down to man-made images. It might be a building. It might be a job. It might be a person. I ask you today, because these three boys, you know, the king said to them, if you will bow down to this image, I'll let you go free. If you notice, I didn't read that out loud, because that's deep within my spirit. But he says, if not, I'm going to burn you to pieces. If you don't take the shot, you can't fly on an airplane to go visit your sick family. If you can't take a shot, you're not worthy to your family. If you don't take the shot, you're destroying your neighbors. That's what they're trying to put across to us. But you know what? Jesus says, put your focus on me, and I'll get you through it all, because I have overcome this world. And with Jesus being in me, that means I've overcome this world. It doesn't matter what they throw at me. It doesn't matter what they say about me. My God, I've been married for 40 plus years. I've had a lot of things said about me. I still love her. I don't always like her. I know she doesn't always like me. But you can't say anything worse than what she said to me. And the world is going to say all kinds of things, because they don't understand our faith. This is how this all got started. I went to sleep thinking about faith. Miss Bonnie said something this morning, and I got to disagree with you, Miss Bonnie. I can walk on water. I've done it. I've done it in her office. I've done it out there, because we have stacks of water out there. And I've walked across the top of them. See, God will always make a way. Don't look at things so literally. It's okay to be fearful. And don't get me wrong. Every time I don't feel good, first thing that goes in my head, I say, well, me and her have said it. Oh, God, I hope we ain't got that mess. You know, because we stand on it and we believe in Jesus. Well, you know what we do? We double up on them zincs and we double up on that juice that she gives me. It's terrible. But I don't like broccoli either. And guess what? They make me eat broccoli. There are certain things that you just got to do. Well, the Word of God says, look quit bowing your knee to an enemy. But what did them boys do? And look it wasn't the day that they were going to burn up. It started all the way back in the very beginning of Daniel. When they were all captured and they were all made slaves, there were 4 of them boys that were brought into a room. Well, actually, there was 100 of them. But 4 of them said, look, we don't desire to eat what you're eating. We don't desire to eat from the king's table. We don't desire to eat that junk that you're fixing to give these people. And the guy who did it, Daniel went to him and said, look, if you allow us to eat what the Lord is telling us to eat, we'll do it. Now, everybody thinks that was just a couple days. It was a 2-year process. After 2 years, the 4 boys looked a whole lot better than everybody else. Fasting and praying. When Daniel was in the lion's den, he slept. And the king worried all night long. Them boys said, we will not bow down to you. But this is what they said that makes it stands out. And I've said this, it don't matter. Even if he allows us to die, we're still going to serve God. I said that on a table, did I not? When they told me, when they were going to cut me, and first they were pumping us up, me and her up, telling me how everything was going to be great, and I'd be running and jumping and everything else. The minute they gave me that shot to put me out, that anesthesia stuff, and they looked at her and they said, well, we'll give them 3% chance of talking right and a 20% chance of walking right. And she goes, Yogi, I'll take you home right now. I said, we've come this far, we might as well finish it. You know, I got to trust God. Can you imagine me not being able to talk? I'd be, oh. You couldn't shut me up. I would talk with my hands. I'd get me a walker. I'm going to get around, folks. The enemy ain't stopping this movement. I am not a monument. I know there's humor in that, but they really would. I'd learn to do sign language. Feed me. Go away. You know, I can't see you, so I don't talk to you. But the world will tell you, oh, you're an invalid. I'm not an invalid. I'm a child of the Most High God. I know who I'm going to bow down to. But when them boys said, well, look, it don't matter, they stood up. They would not bow their knee to a government that's forcing them to do it. This is nothing new what we're going through. The devil has never changed his plan. He's just changed the package. If you'll do this, I'll make sure you get this. Now here's the big one. They're trying to give us stimulus checks again coming up. How many got free stimulus checks? No. Who got a free stimulus check? Thank you. Because you're looking at the cost of it right now. I'll tax nobody under $400,000. Okay, we'll do it different. We'll raise gases that we got plenty of. We'll raise groceries that we got plenty of it. And you know what's really funny? Now, we're a blessed church. We are a blessed church. Our tithing hasn't fallen off. Did you know 80% of the churches, their tithing has fallen off so much that they wonder how they're going to make it through it? What is the enemy doing? He's not saying shut the doors. Tony bought a truck. And when he first bought it, people were making money doing it. Then fuel went up from $3 to $7 a gallon. Tires went from $1,000 to $1,200, $1,500. I'm in the construction field. Well, I was. I'm retired now. But you know, you could buy something for, say, $40. That same piece of material, a 3x3 piece of steel, which was $40 for a 12-foot piece of steel, is now $111. What's changed? My sister lives out there in California. I know what the ocean looks like. She sends me pictures. There's ships just lined up still. They can't unload ships. My cousin works in the Long Beach Long Beach shipping yards. They forced him to take 2 weeks off because they wanted the ships to back up. Because the government said, look, it shut down for 2 weeks. And do you know how much we're paying for them boats to sit out there in an ocean? A week. $25,000 to $50,000 a week. It's storage. They got to run fuel. A boat ain't like that little Humvee or that little Volkswagen you driving out there. You're talking about sucking millions of gallons of fuel that we don't have. The government is intentionally making us do things. But if we'll learn not to bow our knee to this government, and we'll bow our knee to the Lord who created us, and we'll stand up and declare our independence of this world and to despair our look, I've got to be under God. I've got to be under his umbrella. Even though, yes, fear is a real thing. We all have a point of fear. Fear of God, that's great. But what fear is, and you said it pretty close today, Miss Angela, I'm in agreement with what you said, and I agree with what Bonnie said. Fear is saying, I don't know what to do, but I know who does. And believe me, because every time we make a decision, I'm afraid. Made a statement to someone this morning. I said, when you bought that new house, were you afraid? Oh, yes. But you trusted what God is doing. Whenever we make a decision for this church, we have to line up. But we don't make it without you knowing about it. Because we got to trust. Now, we may not do it your way, but we're going to trust what God's given us to do. Don't succumb to this false image. Don't succumb to what they're trying to force us to do. And just because I have a white coat doesn't make me a doctor. Same as because I stand in the kitchen don't make me a chef. Or a race car because I'm in a garage. But I tell you what I am. I am a blood-bought child of the Most High God. And he puts a protection all around me.